than I wanted, but what are you going to do? Here we are with it's Wednesday. New episode of Weekend Reading for who's ever watching this. To recap for anybody who might be watching for the first time, I do three things in these little videos that I make. I read graphic novels mostly. I gave up reading single issues a long time ago. It's just too hard to collect them all and maintain them all. As you can see, I still have a bunch of shit, meaning to get rid of some of them, but I still have a bunch of shit easy to maintain in graphic novel form. But the three things I do is, starting from the first week, I break down what I read last week and what my favorite week, particularly by going into detail on what my favorite read of the week was from last week. Then I break down what I'll be reading this week, giving descriptions from what's written on the back, and predicting what I think my favorite will be after I have read them, and what I think I will be saying is my favorite when I do my next video, if that makes any sense. And the third thing, which is a recent addition, is I ask a question at the end of the week. I asked two questions. I've already asked two of the questions I've thought up. This week, we're on number 3 of the questions that I have. Comic book related questions, related maybe to the comic book industry, comic book writing, just things I think of off the top of my head, things I have questions about. If you want to see what those questions were, go look at the last 2 episodes and you can see what they were. But let's get into this week. Okay, so what did we read last week? Well, normally I have 3 graphic novels, but because it's been a light month in terms of what I've had ordered to come in, we only had 2 last week. We had the Immortal Hulk Volume 9, the weakest one there is, and we had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Here We Make Our Stand. Both are written by Al Ewing, oddly enough. So both are by the same writer. So the quality, with different artists, of course, but the quality of the writing should have been pretty much the same. You would think, but they weren't. My prediction last week was that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 would be my favorite. Because this has been a book that, going back to when it was not kind of originally launched. This iteration of the Guardians of the Galaxy was originally launched, is probably over a decade ago now. No, it has to be over a decade ago now. Jesus Christ, I'm old. It was one of my favorite books until it was canceled, back when Danny Abnett and Andy Lanning wrote it. And but since then, every iteration since then has felt lacking somehow. And this book, while started off strong, this one felt lacking too. This one felt like this story was being rushed, is really the best way I could put it. Maybe it's because it's like half of a story that was told in the first half of in the first trade, but it just didn't feel quite as good. It felt like it was rushing towards an end, almost like it was a book afraid of being canceled, which it isn't. There's a Volume 3 coming, but it looks like they're jump-starting. It looks like they wanted to get to a whole new thing with this book, and they wanted to rush through what they had already made, so it felt weird and off-kilter. But here I am talking about the thing I didn't like, which is something I normally don't do. Immortal Hulk Volume 9, the weakest one there is. That one was my favorite. It really... this has just been a good book. Normally the Hulk is a book that's can hit or miss, but this version of the Hulk has been great. It really has. It's added whole new layers of the Hulk. Normally there's a lot of science fiction-y weirdness in the Hulk, which makes sense considering the character. There's even some conspiracy shit sometimes, but now they've added horror elements and supernatural elements and weird psychological elements, and it's including every character who's been gamma irradiated somehow, you know, from his fucking ex-wife to Doc Samson to the Sasquatch to, of course, the leader is his enemy. And it shows the weird relationship between Banner and why there's so many different versions of the Hulk, that he's just got a split personality, and they all have a say. They all have a weird place in Banner's psychology. So it's very interesting, and it's just been a good read. And I don't know why I thought this wouldn't be my favorite of the week. It just continued being a good read. It carried on the story. I don't know if the next volume is going to be the end or not, but it's like I said, through 9 fucking issues. I mean, this went through issue 45, so that's 5 issues a pop. That's carrying on a pretty damn good story, especially nowadays in comic books where they jump to things so quickly, like for instance. But The Immortal Hulk Volume 9, that was my favorite of the week. That was last week. What do we have this week? We got a pretty good haul this week. This week was almost only 2 issues as well, but because I brought in a really big haul, actually this Wednesday of shit, I was able to add a third one to the list. So let's see what we have. We have John Walker, U.S. Agent, American Zealot, by Christopher Priest, I believe that is. Yes. Oh no, not Christopher Priest. It just says Priest. I don't know who that is. Is it Christopher Priest? I don't know. It just says Priest. And pencils by Georges Ginty. I'm not familiar with that person, but the art looks pretty good. The art looks okay. Yeah, this is about the U.S. agent character who, if you watch the Captain America, the Falcon and Winter Soldier storyline, you might be familiar with. Let's see what it's about. The super soldier you love to hate. That's true. John Walker, the one-time Captain America and former U.S. agent, has been stripped of his official status and is now operating as an independent government contractor protecting covert interests. Walker's latest security detail draws him into conflict between a small town and the corporate giant trying to destroy it. Along the way, Walker acquires a new partner and a new enemy, while being haunted by ghosts from his past and confronting challenges to his future. But when he abandons his assigned mission and heads to Washington to confront the politicians who engineered his firing, a ruthless and enigmatic new U.S. agent arrives to take over, and he's willing to destroy anything and anyone who gets in his way. A showdown is coming with a shield at stake for the winner. So, pretty normal stuff. Seriously, it looks like he's going to be fighting his old partner, Battlestar. This looks like it could be an interesting read. What's up next? Thor Volume 2, Prey, by Donny Cates and Aaron Cutter. This has been a pretty good book. Definitely the first volume was an interesting read. Let's see. Something is wrong with Mjolnir. All-Father Thor needs his hammer now more than ever, and yet the Uru grows heavier with each passing day. What will it take for the God of Thunder to hold on to one of the most powerful weapons in the multiverse? Thor decides to reinvigorate himself by revisiting his old mortal persona after so many years, but he isn't ready for the Donald Blake that awaits him, and neither is Asgard. As a trapped God of Thunder faces the Midgard serpent, Jane Foster reckons with her former lover, reborn into reality and now a deadly enemy. Okay, that's a weird sentence. With the fate of the 10 realms in the balance, Thor must find a way to battle a crazed and determined Dr. Donald Blake, and when the hammer comes down, only one man will remain standing. Sounds interesting. Like I said, Thor's been a good read so far. Here's what I'm thinking is going to be my favorite of this week, and this is a lot. This will be the Future State, the next Batman, written by John Ridley, who's a screenwriter for 12 Years a Slave. They made sure to mention that. Oh, it looks like a lot of writers. So John Ridley, Vita Ayala, Andrew Constant, Paul Jenkins, I know him, Matthew Rosenberg, Paula Sevenbergen, Brandon Thomas, and a lot of fucking pencilers like Laura Braga, Anik, Nick Darrington, Carmine Di Giandomenico, Jack Herbert, Sumit Kumar, Emanuela Lupacino, and Nicholas Scott. So yeah, this is part of the Future State stuff they did in DC, where I think like for a couple months after the end of Death Metal, they basically did this like where they had all the books jump forward. I think it was supposed to be like 5 years in the future or something like that, to like what is supposed to be an alternate future, and showing wild, radical changes to all the characters. Like most of the major characters get replaced, and this is collecting all the Batman and Batman-related storylines. Let's just read the description and make it sense. It says, Batman is dead. In the near future, Gotham City has become a police state where order is maintained with an iron fist by the private law enforcement agency known as the Magistrate. Using advanced weaponry, surveillance, and military tactics, the Magistrate's peacekeepers hunt all remaining heroes and villains in Gotham, ensuring safety for all at great cost to civil liberties and freedom. In this oppressive city-state, justice has emerged in the form of a new Dark Knight who patrols the streets to protect the citizens of Gotham, and heroes and villains alike have begun to rise up to free the city from the Magistrate and its peacekeeper. It's always darkest before the dawn. Collects Future State, The Next Batman, 1 through 4, Future State Nightwing, 1 through 2, and Future State Dark Detective 1 and 3, which is weird, and including all the backup stories starring Batgirl, Grifter, The Outsiders, the Gotham City Sirens, and the Arkham Knights. So, yeah, it's covering a lot of different stories with backups. DC's going back to adding in backups to some of their comic books, which I think is the thing they're going to carry through. So, like, some characters who aren't that popular, who are popular that people want to read about them, but not popular enough to actually sustain their own comic books, will end up as backup stories in more popular characters' books. It's kind of like things they used to do in, like, the fucking 50s and 60s. So, it might work out for them. As for who the new Batman is, I think it's one of Lucius Fox's sons. Not the one who's already a superhero, another one. I don't know how many kids he has. But he's the new Batman. And the old one, Bruce Wayne, he ain't actually dead. He's just faking his death. But yeah. This is what I'm predicting will be my favorite of the week. Simply because it's like I said, I like alternate reality stuff, and this seems interesting. So, but we'll see. We'll see. We were wrong last week, we could be wrong this week. So, pardon me, it's very hot. Oh, goddamn. So, what is the question of the week? The question of the week this week is, which longtime character should be retired or replaced? More like retired and replaced. You want a character, you don't want a character to just be completely gone. They're a liked character, but, as time moves on, a particular character could get stale and somebody new could take the place. This kind of thing actually happens all the time. It just doesn't happen for very long. Like, I was thinking about, in the MCU, they recently had the Falcon replace Steve Rogers as Captain America. And that's something that actually happened in the comic books. Both Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson have taken Steve Rogers' role of Captain America. In fact, they actually... let's not even get into that, but let's just stick with that. Well, one time when Steve was thought dead, Bucky Barnes took his place, and another time when Steve was turned old and lost his super soldier powers, Sam Wilson took his place. But each time he came back, And the weird thing is, each time he came back, the other guys didn't give up the mantle right away. Like, Bucky Barnes didn't give up the Captain America mantle, but eventually he took it back. And when he came back again, when Sam Wilson was Captain America, Sam Wilson didn't give it up, but Steve Rogers was also Captain America, but he was an evil Captain America. It was a weird thing. But there were two Captain Americas at one point. But eventually Steve Rogers just came back as Captain America, and Sam Wilson went back to being the Falcon. So it didn't really last. It was a thing that only lasted for like a handful of years at most. I was just talking about Batman. That's what made me think of this, is that Batman being replaced. And it's not the first time he's been replaced either. In the 90s, he got his back broken by Bane, and he was replaced by a guy named John Paul Valley, who was known as a superhero or vigilante Azrael, and he became Batman for a while. Then in the early 2000s, there was a point where Batman died, and he was replaced by his first sidekick, Nightwing. Now, if you think that sounds very familiar to what I just said about Captain America and Bucky taking his place, there's a question I'm going to ask later on down the line where I'm going to get more into that storyline, but it is very familiar. But that's not what we're talking about here. There's been many other occasions. I mean, Wolverine was replaced by X-13 or X-20. What the fuck? Her stupid fucking original name. She's just Wolverine now. She was Wolverine when he was supposedly dead, and now he's come back and she's just Wolverine. There's just two Wolverines. Let's see. There was one point where the character Quasar was replaced by a female Quasar, and then she died, and then he's just Quasar again. And, I was talking about the Hulk. There's a point where the Hulk was replaced by a kid named Amadeus Cho. Now he's just a sort of gamer-empowered version of himself called Brawn, and Bruce Banner is the Hulk again. Let's see, who else? Who else am I trying to think of? I mean, the longest example of someone being replaced is probably the Flash. If you're my age, the Flash you grew up with was Wally West. And Barry Allen was only a character that was talked about in retrospect, because if you didn't start reading comic books in the 90s, Barry was already long since dead. He died in 1985's Crisis on Infinite Earths. And then Wally West was just the Flash from then on there. Until all of a sudden, in the early 2000s, they got the idea that for some reason they needed to bring Barry Allen back. And they just did. And then there were two Flashes. But you know how this story goes. When the original guy comes back, the replacement, even if he's been the replacement for over 2 fucking decades, he's got to go. Because the new guy's, the first guy's back, so the new guy, he's got to fucking bounce. So Wally West just got pushed to the sidelines, and then they literally restarted the whole DC universe, and then Wally West was just gone. And then there was a new Wally West who wasn't the same character because he was a teenager again, and he was black. It's like, okay, but you're changing a character who has a lot of history with people. And then they realize that, and then decide to bring the original Wally West back in a way that didn't even make any sense. And all his character development was gone. His friends didn't know him. His family just disappeared. And then they fucking completely butcher his character. They make him lose his mind. He ends up killing people. It's just insane. It's insane. So they've just fucked up his character. They showed Wally West no respect. But my point is that even if you were solidly a replacement for a very long time, that you thought, oh, you're just safe now because you've been the guy for so long. It's like, no. If somebody has that fucking nostalgic itch, you can just be fucked. So replacing a character can just end up being a break. But I'm asking, what character should legitimately be replaced? What character? I don't mean dying. I mean, they need to step down. Because their character arc has run its course. They've told every story they can about them. And if they have a replacement in line, replace them with that person. And that character, in my opinion, is Spider-Man, Peter Parker, who should be replaced with, of course, the younger Spider-Man, Miles Morales. It just makes sense. They should have did it years ago. They should have did it when they rebooted the whole Marvel Universe and they brought Peter Parker back. And Peter Parker was running his own company. And he was, he could have been the new Tony Stark. He could have been, the weapon, he could have been the equipment maker / voice of guidance for Miles Morales. He could have been funding, like, the Champions, that team of young superheroes. And he could have been guides to them as a guy who had been a teenage superhero himself and made a lot of mistakes along the way. He could help them, guide them through those mistakes, or guide them around those mistakes so they didn't make them themselves. That would have been an interesting role for Peter, instead of keeping him perpetual, teenage years all the time. It gets a little boring after a while. It gets a little boring to watch a grown man be a fuck-up. Believe me, I know all about that. And I like Peter, I do. So I don't want him gone completely. I just think he should retire the role of Spider-Man, and it should have been Miles' turn. But that's how I feel on the subject. Maybe you have different ideas. We'll see. So yeah, that's my question of the week. Maybe not the strongest question, but it's one that I thought of, and I just thought I'd ask it. So let me know what you think. Maybe you agree with my opinion. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't think any character ever should be replaced. Maybe you're happy. Maybe you're just one of those people who's happy where things as it is, and you don't want anything to change. Maybe you think they should all be replaced with whatever. I don't know. But let me know. So that's about it, and that's what I'll be reading this weekend. Have a good one. Oh, and happy 4th of July. So, take it easy.